Hey, I'm Matt with Let's Talk Music, and I am here with Mike Mangini. Mike is joining us from
Hello.
south of Boston. So, Mike, um, everybody knows you from Dream Theater, but you are putting out a new, as they have called it, a solo masterpiece called Freak of Nature. That is the
That's the
single,
first
correct?
single. Yeah,
Yes.
that's the first single.
And it's the band's called Mangini, and it's your first solo project, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Though the
So
first one released.
you've enlisted some pretty big names on it. I mean, Gus G, Tony Dickinson, Ivan Keller,
Yeah,
Margera.
Majura.
So how did you hand select these people, or did they just say, "Hey, you got this project going on. I want to climb on board"?
It's connections. So in other words, when one person, knows that you're doing this and they say, "Hey, do you have a bassist?" Now someone the bassist might say, "Hey, do you have a whatever?" And then it's just people that know each other that start to like coagulate into what ends up being the final thing. So it's that's how it happened. It's just relationships, and I had worked on a tiny project with Jen, meaning she would release these 1 minute jam things and used me for one of those, and that stuck in my head. So later on down the line, I wrote her. I'm like, hey, you want to listen to some music I have? See what you think of it. If you want to try to sing on it or something.
Hmm.
And that's how that happens. But it's relationships and connections.
Man, I listen to Freak of Nature, and yeah, it's definitely different from what you would normally expect from you.
Well, yeah, because that's calculated, and here's the deal. I have a boatload of song pieces, riffs, folders with lyrics, things like that, audio, uh, of all kinds of aspects of songs. And I have a lot of them that are what more people than not would have expected from me, for obvious reasons. But I have so much material that's it's like drum crazy that something innately hit me that I didn't. I felt like that's been heard. Now, even though I have some really wicked stuff written, and this whole album could have been music that included meter changes and complex patterns and drum things and stuff like that. I kind of felt like, well, it's already it's out there, but I write songs also that are on the other end of the spectrum that are just melodies and lyrics with very little drumming that I like because it challenges me to take less hits and simpler beats, but to do something creative. And that's
Right.
that's where that that's where that toolbox is. So Freak of Nature is in the middle. And the last thing I'll say is that I released it first and it was made like the album. So I can reach a general listening audience and even a young player, the
Hmm.
beginnerist, because if you put Freak of Nature on a cell phone and play it through the speakers, that's going to drive advanced musicians and advanced people like crazy. That's like, this is it sounds awful or whatever. But through a phone, the drums sound like something a beginner could play in a way. Like that's what I want. I want to bring that kind of musician in that might not know what's available to them for growth. What I
Right.
mean by that is that if they listen to Freak of Nation, it's like, okay, I can play that. I can play it. Okay, but if they listen to it with headphones and you start realizing what it takes to play it like that, even though it's not high end speed, it's not high end coordination, but it's difficult enough. The point being the kit's used as a musical orchestra. And once you try to sit down and play that, it's a whole different issue. And maybe a young player will hear it and go, oh, I can play that. And then just pick something up and say, huh, wait a minute, what is that? And whoa, the solo section has this like crazy drumming in it. Like, That's a roll, but how many notes are in the roll? So you get my point. I'm attempting to communicate with people and reach them, and I am attempting to take these skills that I have that are usually placed in a certain box, and I'm attempting to put them in a more general listening box.
Right. And so your main goal here is to inspire.
Yeah, and it just creates some fun. In other words, yeah, you inspire people to be creative, and maybe it's with the lyrics because the songs are all kind of laced with more than a specific meaning, and that's
Mhm.
on purpose because I know people like to make things their own and interpret things themselves. So there are signs and there are seeds, so that could be done if that's what the person wants to do. But if nothing else, this is music with a heavier, it's got a metal sensibility in a way because of the guitar sound, and but the songs aren't full metal, if that makes any sense.
Right. So, I mean, looking at your press release, I mean, you're regarded as one of the fastest drummers around. But I mean, there's a lot of great fast drummers. You know what I mean? And what I really find um cool about you is your technical ability. It's kind of a
Thank you.
like a Neil Peart, and I want to say maybe Danny Carey mixed together. Um, it's your technical aspect is freaking off the charts. So I mean, out
Thank
of
you, because yeah, thanks.
oh, go ahead. You,
No, just thank you.
it's like you know, I feel like I've sat behind a drum kit before, and I sit there and I try to go as fast as I can, but I mean, watching some of your drum solos, man, where you're going above your head and stuff, and you're I mean, just you're definitely a showman, and again, your technical ability is just off the charts. How many years did it take you to perfect that technical part?
Oh, that will make for an interesting answer because I have to answer it saying that I developed that technical part in modules, in different steps, because you can't really, there are so many aspects of coordination, of speed, of pattern recognition, especially, and of the knowledge of different styles and grooves. That's a whole different thing. If you've ever seen my bio, I um, I I won a lot of competitions as a classical and jazz drummer and percussionist. Meaning, in high school, you would your school would go and people could compete for an area of the state, a district, and
Hmm.
then the winners of that district could compete against the whole state, and then every other year the states would compete against everyone that was in this group of
Right.
largely half the United States or something. So I learned a lot about other styles of music. So that took a different mindset. For example, I think it for the speed, first of all, that's a decades long thing, but I've been able to teach it to people in under 4 years. Some that can outdo me at times, and just like I taught them. It's like I taught them with my whole heart. In other words, it wasn't a partial teaching. It was like, if you want to do what I do, trust my methods. Here they are. They're published. Read them, but I'm going to coach you too.
Right.
And that part has to do with my whole album too. It's like that's still me. The drumming's a piece of it, the songwriting's a piece of it, the message is a piece of it, the intent is another piece of it. It's a piece of work. It doesn't define me. It's just a piece. I mean, it does define a whole me kind of a thing, but it's just a piece. So to get the speed, you know, for me, it I don't know if it took two decades or so, and coordination took a couple of decades. But crisscrossing is like overlapping each other, like not spent like 20 years on one thing, but
Right.
spent like 8 months, and then basically taking a 2 year period, I guess, for each module, and then working on those, maybe two or three of them because they worked together for a decade, and then a decade later, I worked on a different thing. And I'll give you something specific. When I took the job at Berklee College of Music in the year 2000, and I was there for a decade, I didn't practice speed at all, chops, stuff like that. What I practiced, other than maintaining it, of course,
Right.
what I practiced was the meticulous use of what's happening in between the notes with the way that the drums are hit for three main branches of Latin music, meaning Afro-Cuban, Brazilian, and Caribbean. But Brazilian is broken up into, segments, and so is Afro-Cuban. And it's like, there are people that do not only do just the Afro-Cuban for a living, but just a couple of the styles in Afro-Cuban for a living. So I took that decade to learn all of that stuff as much as I could absorb it. And so there's a decade. And the funny thing is, I had already competed playing jazz and Latin, for example, but big band versions of it, okay, like high school stuff. And all state, though, it was advanced. But to actually play it right, I learned it, and I was at Berklee, and my colleagues there who are the top tier would give me pointers. But then I had to do drum clinics with a drummer named Horacio Hernandez, who's a close friend. I would play the things correctly, but something was a little different. And I don't buy cliches that don't make any sense. Phrases like, well, it's in the blood. Well, what's in the blood? Hemoglobin's in the blood. What do you mean? The Latin style. Look, what are you talking about? It. And what do you mean by it? Like, I'm a computer guy. So every word is like, what do you mean by that? It. What's in the blood? It's hemoglobin. It's this, it's that. So funny. The funny thing is, it's like, I get what's meant, and that's the point. But I really had to spend time, and he had to tell me a couple things, like, when you play that figure, you're going to lay back. These notes aren't placed in the space that you think they are. This is like little delayed, and it's like late, but then you come in on time. And I understood that. And to feel it was a different thing. So in that decade included study, learning, playing music. I picked up a GB gig, that's a wedding band that did a bunch of Brazilian stuff. And I was so happy that the horn players were like, we'll call you again because you actually played the Brazilian stuff correctly. And they're like, we didn't know you for that. You're like, I'm like, well, I'm the speed and metal guy, right? Right. Yeah. Okay. I was no problem. That's how I'm known. It's okay. But that's the point. So I took time to learn speed and then spread it out over all these decades, and coordination and pattern recognition, the study of rhythm, which I can teach to people that aren't musicians. In fact, I have a course on it. I have this Vimeo rental, and I've had them do it. I've had people that don't even play music get that, inexpensive rental. There's nothing to lose, really. And they'll learn how to count and feel on and off the beats, like in betweens. For example, the progressive music and the drummers that you mentioned. The feeling of the beats and the rhythms has a lot of in-betweens. That disturbs a general listening audience in a lot of ways. It can, depending on how it's used. If it's used in chunks a certain way, then you can reach those people, as it's not too complicated like that. So that kind of a thing is learnable. And if you want to dig into it and learn how to actually use it and play, well, then you have to spend a couple of years. I mean, the way I teach now, Matt, it's like people don't need the time I did. Because I'm the one that developed the system I learned from.
Right.
That didn't exist. It didn't exist, so there was nothing for me to go to. I would always ask questions. How do I get my feet to do this? And people would say, well, just do rudiments with your hands. And I would always ask, like, well, whoa. How do I, how? Where's the foot go on the pedal? What's this? What muscle? And people didn't know how to answer those questions. So I said, all right, I'm going to figure it out. And I'm going to publish a book that says, look, put your foot here, do this, do that. Also, study with me and I'll show it to you right there and y'all fix it in like 42 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. And I seen some of the ones that you did on YouTube, and I mean, I really enjoy that when, you know, musicians make a video to show the general public or whatever how this is done. You know, I mean, I know a couple of guitar players that are doing, you know, online lessons that are, you know, pretty big people, you know, and it really catches people's attention. They're like, oh my God, I could learn to play like this guy. But it's not, I don't think it's so much learning to play like somebody. I think it's when you can uh kind of how like you just did it, like the anatomy of drumming. When you can explain that to somebody, that makes a lot more sense to people than, you know, just one, two, three. You know what I mean? So
Yes. Yeah.
and I think that's really cool that you know, you dove into that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, teaching is such a rewarding thing, and learning it is a rewarding thing. But then they become secular, where if I'm explaining something to someone, I want to help them. I don't want to steer them in the wrong direction. I couldn't live with myself. You know what I mean? So, but then having to explain something means you have to not, you have to know what you're talking about. So to know what you're talking about, it takes time and research. And I think, wow, I have to really learn about this thing and develop it to be able to help somebody. And then I learn more by teaching and all that stuff. And it's all encapsulated in this album in the most subtle ways. That's part of why it's called Invisible Signs. For example, you heard Freak of Nature, correct?
Yes.
All right. So in Freak of Nature, there's a like a one of those duet things
Hmm.
that's we're releasing. And I say we, it's a team of people in various ways helping me. Um, so that's what duet's going to come out, or you call it a challenge or whatever. And what's interesting is it's the first chunk of the song, and it sounds easy to the point that I was made privy that a small percentage of people said a little more than you did about, well, this is not what's expected or different, or I mean, and I get it. I didn't fall off an onion truck, right? So, um, but they would go a little bit more mean, I guess, and oh, this is boring or whatever. And I don't want to see it. Like, let them express themselves. I don't want. I don't need it. Oh, look, but I'm curious because it hit me that when the listening time was analyzed, that they didn't even listen to the whole song. So I'm like, well, then what's the comment? What's the intention there? Like, because if you didn't listen to it, and didn't realize that it's not as simple to play as it looks on that. But not that anybody has to, but my point is it's simple to listen to.
Yeah.
It can be enjoyed by a young player. And if they want to listen, or if anybody wants to try to emulate that and switch their balance the way that I do and stay in time, I would love that. Or just interpret it some different way. Just listen to it and be inspired by, like, wait a minute, what is that? And it's just the beginning section. It's not even the section, the solo section, which has very advanced roll structures that fit over odd spaces, and it's
Yeah.
not so easy to make them start and end. And you have to make them start and end where they're supposed to start and end, because there's music that goes along with it.
Hmm.
So all of these different attributes, were put together. But at the end of the day, I thought, man, I really wish that a general listening audience would become privy to what has been done with that instrument in a way to make it so enjoyable and fun and learnable that it just has positive effects in people's lives. And again, I've been a teacher forever, so I see the influence that I have on young people,
Right.
and it's or even people in general, and stuff like that. And when I am, the way that I am with them, which is they're first, and I'm like, what do you need? What can I do? I'm going to solve it today. That feeling is unbelievable, but I have to have a lot in my arsenal to
Right.
be able to answer those questions. So yeah, I don't know. So Did you think the solo and Freak of Nature was that part was expected, or was it still? What'd you
I
think?
like I said, I really enjoyed it. I
Oh,
just
good.
I feel like, I didn't really try to compare it or analyze it with Green Theater. Um,
Yeah,
it's more of the style of music you guys are playing that is different from Dream Theater,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I would
yeah.
expect.
Yeah.
It's your solo project. You're not going to say, "Hey
Right,
guys, I want to go make our kind of music over here on my solo project," you know?
right, right.
So, I mean, I would expect that, but I mean, my one question I got for you, man. I mean, is what got you into music? What got you into playing drums? Not like who's your influences, but what really drove you to sit down and become the person that you are today?
Well, you know how forces in nature are able to be felt, like you'll sense gravity. If you step off a ledge, you're going to end up on the cement 12 feet down. Like, you can experience it. You can experience electromagnetism. You can get electrocuted and shocked. So you understand, like, forces are real, and a magnet is going to attract a paperclip, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, just maybe these other things can be called forces too, but in a different physics plane, under these four dimensions that we live in. I don't want to sound complicated, but I'm just saying that something calls you, it's magnetic.
Right.
And even if I'm just using that as a metaphor, even if the technical thing I'm proposing here is untrue or true, is irrelevant to the fact that it called me. I didn't call it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So it called me. And how did that happen? Here's the answer that's specific. My older brother and sister would play music in our then dining room on a record player that had the different speeds on it. So at something like two and a half for sure, or by two and a half, I was grabbing cans in the lower cabinets in our kitchen and setting them up to look like the drums that were on the LP records.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I crawled and I got pencils and it would mimic the drummer had sticks. If I'm going to hit this, so that's what happened. I I started, putting the cans in shapes and playing along. So I would open up LP records and just look at the pictures, and then listen to the music and hit the cans. And that's how it started. And then, my family noticed, and my I don't know who it was. It might have been my brother that said, "Hey, look at this." So my father got me a toy drum set, and I proceeded to um, annihilate it. And I ended up in a band called Annihilator, right? Which is funny. I ended up annihilating this thing because the skins were paper. And drum sets at the time didn't have the drum heads with the rings. You had to make your drum head. That's not what this was. But my grandfather, my mother's father, he went and bought me a real miniaturized drum set, and it had the heads where the whatever it was, whatever that stuff was made of, you would soak the plastic and put it over the drum and fit it, and then screw it down. That's how long ago
Oh
I
wow.
learned it, right? So yeah, so I then set up the kit, and my brother and sister gave me albums and said, "Learn it." And I'm like, "Okay." And I was like, "What's going on?" And that's how I learned to put the record player on 16 speed. And I was only 4,
Oh
but I
shit.
would put the record on 16 speed. Oh yeah. And I would slow it down and dissect it and then play. And then my family would invite neighbors or people over to watch me, and I would cry my eyes out and refuse to play. So, because I had later heard, I was like, this is what I said to them: is how could you do that to me? I'm not good enough. So I always knew innately that I had to go somewhere with it. I mean, there was being called to something that at that young age nobody can process or understand. That's why I had to say it was like whatever force that is that calls you, and it is as real as a magnet. It called me, and that's how I did it. And so I had the support of my family, and through the support of my family, I was able to get equipment every now and then and then just practice. But I have to tell you something interesting is I didn't want to be a drummer when people asked me what I wanted to do. And in my heart, I can tell you, I didn't want to be a drummer or professional drummer. I wanted to be the next Robert G. Orr, Bobby Orr for the Boston Bruins. I wanted to be the next him. And I practiced more hockey in my driveway. I would have different projectiles and different weights and shoot 1,000 of them into a part of the net. I did that so much. I broke the vinyl siding on our house. I'm surprised my father didn't take me in the backyard and hang me in a tree by monofilament, by my thumbs with monofilament or something for punishment. I just made that up. I mean, he would never.
Right.
He wouldn't do that, people. I'm just saying. But hit me with a cricket bat like Spinal Tap. Whack.
Yeah.
Anyway, I broke the house, got it out. Or make me put me into child labor to make me pay for the
Right.
pay for the thing. So anyway, I always, but this teaching thing that I do, these books that I have, this system that I develop, these cognitive scientists that I'm working with on a team, that I'm, offering something valuable to, I'm bringing something to the table to people that study how human beings learn. And I have answers just because of all this, but it was in me when I was that young age. I always knew I had to practice, but the practice had to be, there had to be a directive to it and steps. So you get the picture that I did this hockey thing and this drumming thing, and I just played for fun, and music made me want to learn. That's why I'm releasing music. And I hope that some of my music, it might be just one song. It might be just one song that someone hears on the radio, some young person jamming at home, and they hear something that's they know it's got a little something extra to it.
Mhm.
A little ghost pepper powder is in there, a little spice, just a little. You don't want to burn anyone's mouths here.
Right.
But yeah, maybe they hear that. So it's like I'm really trying to communicate and reach people, but the stuff for the psycho musicians is in there because Gus is a virtuoso.
Yes.
They all are. They all are. And Jen has got just this unique sound and incredible pitch and incredible rhythm because of the guitarist that she is. It's almost like, wow, this is I'm pretty lucky here.
Right.
Right. So so all of them have this thing. And the interesting thing is that, for the advanced kind of player, there's plenty of drum stuff I put in there. Wait till they dissect it. I mean, it's there. And the next release coming up, and that will be announced next week.
Mhm.
The next release, you're probably going to hear it and go, all right, I sort of expected this first, is what you might think, but I don't want to put that in your head. I think people that, went right to this and then only listened to the first 20 seconds or something of Freak of Nature and didn't even hear the solo.
Right.
Like none of that stuff, right? Like, what are you doing? But anyway, that's a choice. But maybe they never intended to, because sometimes, sometimes people like to go and comment for all ulterior motives and different reasons and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's what that environment invites. Well, whatever the reason, plus or minus, yes or no intention, some intention, who cares? The bottom line is that didn't listen to the whole thing. And this next one, as soon as it starts, is probably going to get, again, this is a small group we're talking about, but this is being analyzed by people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So they know numbers. And so it doesn't bother me because if this many people maybe say that or tell me I have terrible hair and I'm this, or I look like Ozzy, or what's it? Severus Snape is the character from what's that?
Wow.
What show is that?
Hi,
Who's
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter? Okay, can you believe that I didn't really? I mean, I knew, but I didn't know because I've never seen. I don't watch TV. I don't watch anything, right?
Right.
Well, much of anything. So Yeah, I mean it's in there. And if any of those drummers that can mimic what I'm doing on a smaller kit, they've got to realize that's it's not this. It's cool and I want to see it and it's great, all right? But there's that extra level, there's that extra gear that's in there because playing this drum set, Matt, staying in time is about as difficult as getting stung by 44 hornets while you are trying to focus on music. And it's really unbelievable because of the symmetry of it. And what I'm trying to say is that my body is positioned and I had to learn how to talk to my limbs and talk to my feet. And believe me, when I'm at my house, especially when my kids were younger, they would see me like talking to myself, like, "Are you okay, Dad? Like, what are you?" I'm like, no, it's just I got to do it because I announce things like I'll go open, pull the door, bend. Like to open a cabinet to get a coffee cup. I am not even exaggerating. I can't turn it off. I'm open the door and I'll explain things to people. Like I do it all the time when I'm in bands on the road and bandmates, in fact, all the musicians are like, why are you announcing what you're doing? Like, just open the refrigerator, please. I don't want to hear that you're opening the refrigerator. Like, open the door, step back, bend the leg, boom, down. And I'm like into this whole thing. So by doing that, I have to do it on this drum set because it keeps me in tune and then I don't go out of time. And I can't afford to go out of time because literally people are counting on me to do the counting. They're
Right.
counting on me to provide something solid for them. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just going
And
to throw it out there that you're doing an excellent job of it. It doesn't matter how,
thanks.
how you do it, whatever works for you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's difficult though. I mean, if but my point was that it's on the album. There's stuff that's in there. Believe me, it's buried. That's not maybe what it seems and needs to be dissected. And so
Right.
it'll be fun. It'll be fun for a lot of drummers, I think. A lot of musicians too, because Gus is actually either following me or I'm following him.
Yeah. All right, Mike. Well, we are just about out of time. Just one last
Mhm.
question. Is the album already out or when is the release date?
Okay. Um, the first single is out, Freak of Nature.
Right.
The next single will be out the week after next, and the album will be out 3 weeks later. I'm still making sure that I have the date settled because I'm planning, as my father would say, a big festouche. I'm planning a big festouche, a 2 day event, and it'll be no fun at all. Just kidding.
Right.
So, though the album will be released at an event, and that will, gosh, what weeks? Let me just take a minute and count. So we got this week. This is a half a week.
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, 4 in a month. In a month, actually. So in a month, the full record will be released. So we want to give some time. We're letting Freak of Nature marinate, and then when the next one comes out, we're gonna let that marinate because normal releases in like the way it used to be anyway, a band would release a track and it would marinate on the radio, and then it's like 2 months later or whatever it is, another track is coming from the so and so album by so and so, and here it is. We
Right.
will now debut it for you on 101.55,
Right.
FM. Boom. So it's a different thing these days. So for me to say a month seems like an eternity, but it's got to go in steps.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I'll definitely look forward to it. And plans of hitting the road to to promote the album or to support it?
Nothing like that. Nothing like that. Honestly, my life right now is the way that I play drums. When I play, especially when I'm on stage, I live life in very short increments so that I'm not living in the past and I'm not worried about the future, if that makes any sense. So
Yeah.
you have to plan. Of course, I have to plan. But right now, I'm just focused on getting this album out there because what if nobody at all likes it? Then who am I going to play for?
True. Well, Mike,
Nobody
it's
likes
been
it. Like,
huh?
you know,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do? Like
Uh,
maybe, and if a certain amount of people like it, then I'll adjust for that and jump on another tour or do whatever. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
see what comes, huh?
Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, it's been a pleasure, man. Like I said, I've known your music since you picked up with Dream Theater, and I'm loving what I'm hearing from you. I think that you put together a great group of people to play on this, and Mike Mangini, thank you very much for being on.
You're welcome, Matt. I appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too, sir. All right, bye.